as I was saying, this is third Partners Talks. This is a virtual platform where members can dialogue about issues of the day. They can talk with special guests on a theme that's relevant to the month they're in. For example, last month we had a Partners Talks on the environment because it was the Earth Day event. International Women's Day was in March, and we had our first Partners Talks in March. And today is our third one, and we're very happy to have some special guests with us here. And I hope you have watched the film. The film, Empty Space, deals with various issues of growing up, adolescent frustrations and coming of age, making connections, and it deals with some sensitive issues. We are looking at perspectives of bullying in this, and there's other issues that come up that may, I just want you all to be aware that these may be some difficult issues for you, and we're not making any judgments. We're just having a healthy dialogue, because as it turns out, I found out that this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we can look at it in that way. I want to introduce the moderator for today's panel, and then she will begin asking questions and introducing the panelists that we have here today. Ariana Friedel is retired from the University of Illinois in Chicago, where she established the John Nuveen Center for International Affairs. And she has previously taught Spanish and Portuguese. She is a consultant in various international cross-cultural, intercultural communications. She has a bachelor's degree from the Federal University in Rio Grande do Sul in music. And then she has a bachelor's degree in political science from University of Illinois in Chicago. She also has a master's in Spanish. She speaks several languages. And we at Partners are very lucky to have her, because she is on the board of the Illinois chapter of Partners of the Americas. She is the founder of one of our main programs every year, and that is the MOSTRA. And those are films that are Brazilian films or American films that have a social conscience. And in fact, the film today, Empty Space, is one of those films that was shown in Brazil. And this festival will be happening again this year in November. And it'll be its 13th year, I think, 12th or 13th year. So we're very lucky that in all of the things that Ariana does, and she does a lot, she's very special to us at Partners. So I'm going to turn this over to Ariana. Again, if you're just entering, at the bottom of the screen, there's an option for interpretation. Choose English, Spanish, or Portuguese.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be here. I think this is one of the special films that we had in Brazil when we had our Mostra of American Films in Brazil. And I'm going to introduce to you some of our panelists. I am going to start with James Choi, because he's the director of the movie. And we really have a wonderful relationship here with James Choi and the DePaul University, which hosts our Mostra every year for many, many years. So it's one of the universities. We have about 12 to 13 universities, major universities in the Chicago area and in the Illinois and Indiana, where we present our Mostra of Brazilian films. with social conscience. And Paulo is one of the key ones too. And I'm delighted to introduce James Choi. James has produced 2 critically acclaimed female-led features. The first one was made in China, and the second one was St. Francis. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I think we have so much to talk, but both of them have won awards here in one of our festivals, the South by South Festival. And James made his directorial debut with Empty Space, which is a multi-award winning film written by Judy Grant, who also wrote his first one. He currently is doing a Brazilian documentary. Actually, he finished, right? I think he already finished the documentary, which is very interesting too. So he's very, very involved, and he's doing another one, which is All Things Considered, which is set in Korea. And so he's based out of Chicago at DePaul and teaches film at DePaul University School of Cinematic Arts. And he directed this film we are seeing today. And I'm going to turn it on to you, James, to just say a few words if you want to before we start our.
Yeah, I think Ariana covered it all. Thank you so much for that generous introduction. Yep, my name's James. I'm the director of this film. Just thank you guys for showing up, and look forward to digging in and talking about some of the subject matters that we covered here and talk about the film a little bit this afternoon.
Wonderful. I would like to introduce also Julia Silva. And Julia was a staff member with the American Psychological Association until 2020, right? Yes. And as a director of the Association of Psychological, the American Psychological Association. Oh my goodness, I have this all turned around. She's the director of the Prevention Office since its creation in 2008 until last year. She has an extensive experience of programs and projects in coordination of multi-site interventions. Ms. Silva has 2 multi-site interventions, ACT, Raising Safe Kids program, and the Effective Providers for Child Victims of Trauma program. She also has vast experience in developing and conducting in-person and web-based training on violence, prevention, childhood adversities, childhood trauma, parenting, and cross-cutting mental treatments, youth and community violence, immigration, and trauma. It is a vast experience that she has, and I think we are very, very fortunate to have you. Would you like to say a few words?
Hi, good afternoon. Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I saw the movie, and I think it's a great movie, and I hope everybody has have seen the movie and being also loving in the movie and the issue. So I can't wait for us to discuss a little bit the topics, the subjects, and the purpose of the movie. And thank you, James, for a great opportunity to help educate people about, issues that you address in the movie.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I would like to introduce now Merrick Robinson. And we are extremely fortunate to have him. Merrick is the protagonist of the film that we are seeing today. He is based in Chicago and is an experienced actor and singer on both stage and screen. Some notable appearances include NBC's Chicago Fire and Agency Theater Chagrin Falls. Merrick, would you like to say a few words?
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me, Ariana, I think.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's really a joy to see people enjoying the movie. I think that's some of the greatest joy that actors can have, is other people enjoying their work. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to discuss it today.
Thank you. And Apollinar, I would like to introduce Apollinar Salcedo. He's a lawyer specialized in public administration. He is the mayor of Santiago, Cali in Colombia. And he was the creator of the Foundation for Social Equality. It's Fundación Gestos de Equidad Social, where he was president from 1995 until 2019. He's also the co-founder of the National Association of Municipalities with Afro-Descendant Population. He was its first president. We are very delighted to have you here with us, Apollinar. Would you like to say a few words?
Sí, Bárbara, sí, Bárbara, a todos muy buenas tardes, y también estoy muy contento de que me hayan tenido en cuenta para participar en este foro, y con mucho gusto me pongo a disposición de los presentes para que en desarrollo del tema puedo absorber cualquier pregunta que puedan hacerme. No tengo ninguna observación, no tengo ninguna prevención para colaborar y aportar mi propio testimonio como una persona ciega, que seguramente a la temática de hoy puedo aportar. Muchas gracias.
I would like now to start with our actual talk. And I'm very excited about this program, because not only for bringing Jim and Merrick here, but because the film really touched me when I saw it for the first time. And the film presents so many different perspectives and underlying themes: discrimination, bullying, coming of age, abusive parents, which go way beyond the single topic of bullying. And I would like to ask Jim, did you intend all of them to get the audience's attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I'm an immigrant. My parents came to the United States when I was 5. I think a lot of my films deal with, you know, the question of identity, how you fit in, just trying to figure out where you, how you see yourself in the world. And so that's a pretty heavy theme that goes along across a lot of the films I work on, pretty much all the films I've worked on thus far. And this is a film that the writers wrote 15 years ago. It's always sort of stayed on my mind as something that was relevant, and also just about representation and trying to tell stories about people that are part of our lives. And so when I moved to Chicago, I just thought it was a really great, perfect script for me. I was living out in LA for 20 years. So when I had returned, I had always remembered the script, and I thought that it would be a great film to shoot in the Midwest.
This is really wonderful. What made you think about this movie, Jim? You know, this theme for this movie?
Yeah, and again, I think, as I mentioned, you know, being an immigrant and just having sort of a perspective of being sort of the other, and sort of trying to navigate in that world. I mean, that was something that really struck me, obviously, and had an impact on me growing up. And as a filmmaker, and understanding the tools that we have to, you know, start dialogue, and to get people to feel and empathize and understand as much as we can about each other, is just a big driving force for me. And so, you know, this was a perfect story that represented people that weren't often represented on screen. And I think that's coming into play a lot more, and people are becoming more aware to do that now. But, you know, 10 years ago, that was not the case even still. And so, you know, the characters really jumped out at me. I think the struggle, again, as you mentioned, as far as what Merrick's going through, not only just extends from, I mean, it starts with bullying or can be part of it, but it extends to a lot of other things of just growing up and just trying to find who you are and your place in the world. And it represented two characters that I thought were very unique that that I wanted to explore.
Wonderful. What made you choose Merrick for your protagonist of the film?
Right. So, I mean, I think, again, the thing, and so my last 10 years has really been focused on micro-budgeted independent film. And I think what that allows me to do, at least, is that I'm not pressured by, you know, Hollywood standards or name talent, as they say. And so I was just, you know, it was a pretty extensive casting process. I think I brought Merrick in numerous times. You know, it was much more than just like one reading and then saying that's it. But, you know, I think the more I spent time with him and the more that I read him, the more I matched him up with other actors. It was pretty clear that he was the guy to play this, and he's just so talented. So the casting process, it was pretty traditional in the sense of just seeing a lot of people or as many people. And then trying to pick the best person. But I have to say, just like, you know, as we speak of representation, you know, this, you know, trying to find specific people, like people that aren't represented often, is not easy to do. So, you know, it was a challenge, but I was just so lucky that Merrick was local and he was available.
Was Merrick one of your students when you chose? No.
No. This was an open casting call for all of Chicagoland.
Okay. So I would ask Merrick then, how did you feel when you were chosen to be a protagonist on this film?
Well, anytime an actor gets offered a part, it's a good day. So it was kind of I did come in multiple times, but it was kind of interesting because I didn't know a whole lot about the project before coming on. I just knew kind of the character, a little bit about the character, and I had met Elizabeth, who played opposite me in the film, and so I knew after meeting James and Elizabeth that, you know, this is something I wanted to be a part of for sure. So getting the call to be a part of it was something that was really exciting. And I was, hadn't had much film experience at the time, so I was excited to get into that realm of acting as well. And so it was a positive experience all the way through.
We were very fortunate that you got this part, because I think you did an excellent job, really.
Thank you.
And I have another question. Were you bullied when you were in high school?
I would say 7th and 8th grade were the worst 2 years of my life because of different types of bullying. And, you know, kids get bullied for anything and everything. And for me, it was mostly my size. I was pretty big from a young age on. And that was definitely the reason I was targeted by a couple of different bullies that I specifically remember. But I also remember entering high school, and at that time at the school that I was in, you had a chance to kind of divide and be separated into your friend groups. And so I noticed, like, day one of 9th grade, that my life was better. And I think that was because I got to have some separation from the people who I didn't like to be around so much, and more around my friends, because I had plenty of friends in junior high and high school, but my time was able to be filled more with those friends rather than being kind of forced together with some of the people who I felt bullied by.
Wonderful. So did that affect your studies?
Do you mean in school, in middle school?
Yeah.
I was always a decent student. I was blessed enough to be skilled enough where I didn't have to work too hard to get through school. So I was a B and A average kid, and both of my parents were teachers as well, so they had a great perspective on education and really helped me through that time. So I did okay as far as grades went.
That's great. So your parents are not like the parents on the film?
Not at all. You don't get to see a whole lot of Tom's parents in the film. You just kind of see glimpses of what his relationship with them could have been like. But I have the most encouraging of parents to this day, and they've always been a huge support for me. And I think with whatever a child is going through, if he has solid parents, I think they're much more likely to do well with that, regardless of whatever kind of hate might be thrown at them. So I was very fortunate with that.
That's wonderful. Julia, you deal a lot with intervention and with the psychological problems that some of the students and others go through. What on the subject of bullying and discrimination, what kinds of intervention are there available that you can tell us about? I think this we want not only to learn, but we want to educate everybody on the audience, right, about things that we can do and we should know too. So it would be very helpful to know about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm not a clinician. I'm a community psychologist. And have always worked with communities on prevention. The thing about bullying is that bullying is something that happens in the environment. It's not something that, oh, I'm here, and then because of something over there, I am, affected by that. Bullying is part of an environment. This is why it is so prevalent in the schools, especially like Merrick said, middle school and high school, when kids are more vulnerable and when, there are all this competition over there for who gets the best girls, who is the, the dears and darlings of teachers, who gets on the, on the teams, and all the hormones, the brain and hormones and things are developing very fast at that period of life. So what we always say is that bullying is something that is part of the environment. It's not to take the children, the aggressor and the victim, and they, okay, let's do psychotherapy with them, and that is the intervention. But it's not. What all the research shows is the environment needs to change. So there are many programs and interventions for the schools, because it's not an individual thing. This is a group thing. This is a culture thing. It is very related to our social values also. So our culture, our countries value people who are thin, people who are smart, people who are nice, people who are, who can get the best, girls, and those who are good students. So we have this stereotype, socially constructed and socially reinforced, that, to be the perfect and that everybody is gonna, clap on, you have to fit, a mold. So if you don't fit that, so those kids will massacre you. So it's not something that an individual intervention will. It's not to get, for instance, the kids who are the bullies. It doesn't help just to have them on psychotherapy. If the environment in the school does not change, they will come back, because it's the environment that creates and gives them this, the chances and the place for this to happen. Kids who are overweight, or I was underweight. I was a very, very thin person with arched legs. I was bullied because of that. There was a word in Portuguese. So they called me, remember the olive from oh my God, the spinach, the cartoons.
Cachorro.
Popeye.
Popeye.
Popeye. Remember Popeye's girlfriend?
Olive oil.
That was my nickname.
Ah.
You know? Yeah, that was my nickname because I was thin like that. So I never worn like mini skirt or, you know, those very tiny dresses because I was the opposite of Merrick, but I was bullied too. So, and that is because the environment, everybody, so the society values a certain type of people. Mm-hmm. So if you don't fit, you know, there is for sure that when it is the moment and the environment, people will go after you because you do not fit what society, you know, teaches and you know, value. So society value a certain type of people, not too thin and not too fat. So we needed to be in this middle, and most of us are not. So, and then with this in mind, this social construct pressing on us to be the perfect, to follow the mold, follow the model, you know, and then kids in the school, they are playing for power, and this bullying is a power thing. I'm not like you. You are the, you know, the thin or the flat or the, you know, whatever, you know, bad things we have, but I don't have those things. I'm the perfect one. So I'm gonna make you miserable. So everybody knows that I am the one. It's about me. I want the power. I want everybody to see that I can, you know, I can run the show. And it's miserable. It's awful, but that's how it is. So interventions have to be in the environment, in the school, because this is a thing that is social. You need the environment. Yeah. You need the attendance. It's not something that you do one by one. You need others seeing you being the bully.
Mm-hmm. Apollinar, I would like to ask you about how was your experience with, you know, with bullying or, you know, discrimination because of your disability?
Muchas gracias. Ariane, muchas gracias. Mi experiencia, yo quedé ciego a la edad de 7 años por un accidente casero en la casa. Entonces, inicialmente estudié en un instituto para niños ciegos y sordos aquí en la ciudad de Cali. Estudié con más niños ciegos y con niños sordos. Pero pienso que la experiencia del bullying siempre está presente en el comportamiento de los seres humanos. Pero yo creo que es muy importante el papel de la familia. Mi papá y mi mamá, cuando yo quedé ciego, no me discriminaron, me siguieron dando un tratamiento igual al de mis hermanos. Entonces, cuando yo llegué a estudiar, sí sentía en algunas oportunidades de que pude sentir algo de bullying por ser ciego y por ser afro. Estas dos cosas las sentí, pero lo que puedo aportar es que particularmente considero que la fortaleza mental y espiritual para soportar el bullying es muy importante. Y esto creo que lo da la familia, cómo te han tratado en el hogar. Porque conozco casos de personas con inhabilidades o ciegos o sordos o con problemas físicos que tienen discriminación en su propia familia, y eso me parece muy grave, pero no fue esta mi experiencia. A mí mis padres y mis hermanos me tratan igual me, me felicitaban cuando hacía las cosas bien, y cuando cometía faltas o errores también era castigado y sancionado, sin mirar que tenía que ser especial por ser ciego, porque creo que el hacernos sentir diferentes es malo si creen que por ser ciego, por ejemplo, somos personas especiales, o para mal o para bien. Lo que uno quiere cuando tiene una limitación es que la sociedad y la familia le den la oportunidad de ser igual a los demás.
Esto es muy, muy bueno para todos oírnos, porque siempre, I'm going to speak in English, right? Yes. It is really very important for all of us to hear that, because if we like it or not inside, when we see, you know, a person with a disability, we think of them differently, and we should not, because they are still people as we are, same thoughts and everything. So I would like to get into the film a little bit more, maybe with Merrick. Your relationship with the your protagonist, got your name?
Lily?
Yes, and you know, how did you think that developed? And I know it may be a little utopic on a real life, but at the same time, it could be with anybody else with another disability or something. How did you think that developed?
Yeah, between Tom and Lily in the film specifically. I think Lily was a pretty girl, and I think that's the impression that Tom got right away. And you know, her disability kind of was the furthest thing from his mind, and the fact that she was treating him as an individual as well, I think had an incredible impact on him. And I think that reciprocation of respect that eventually turns into love, I think is an incredibly powerful force that gives them the ability to weather the storms that they have to go through in the film. And beyond that, they don't see each other for his size or her vision. They see each other as people and as individuals. And I think that's kind of where it starts for them.
That's incredible. I think you said the correct word there for me is what really catches my attention is respect. So many times, you know, we forget that. We owe respect to any human being. It doesn't matter of if they have or not a disability. And James, I think maybe you would like to comment something on why did you choose, you know, an overweight person and a blind person on your film?
I mean, again, we were actually open to a lot of different possibilities there. It was really just about, you know, perception, as Julia said, and just sort of the idea of how are people perceived without saying a word, and how can two people who are perceived that way connect? And so, you know, we were open to possibilities of, could it be somebody who has a physical scar or a physical injury? I mean, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, the script was written for somebody who was being bullied for their weight, but it could have been numerous other things. And, you know, from the filmmaking process, it really was about talent. And again, I think when Merrick walked in and you know, just his essence of being able to show vulnerability, but still have inner confidence, still have, you know, fears. Those things sort of came through naturally for him. And so it just seemed like that was the right way to go. But, you know, I'm always flexible. I'm not the type of filmmaker who is like dead set on something being one way and having to go that way. And so, you know, I try to be as open as possible with all those possibilities. other than sort of the thematic elements of, again, people who are perceived differently, wrongly, and then just how they're going to connect.
We have a question from Michelle Forte. I think bullying should be dealt on a national level because family traditions, religion, race dynamics, ethnic communities, and society distinctions, I think, or dictate, I think she wanted to say, the culture. For example, I am studying Alakashu, take and run, or grab and run, in Central Asia, currently for a look that I desire to write. Elder women bullying kidnap the young girls into marrying their sons that they do not love and or do not even know. That's an example. The question is this: should President Biden address bullying by proposing legislation for classes in first families and then religion institutions, schools, colleges, universities, and in corporations and other businesses? What are your thoughts? This is open to anyone. It's a question to any of you.
Well, there are so many programs and knowledge and research on bullying, at this time. We advanced it a lot. If you go to CDC website, the Centers for Disease Control, if you go to the Department of Health and Human Services website, enter bullying there. There's enormous things in terms of programs, discussions. Well, the United States, as comparing to Latin America countries or many European countries, is very is decentralized. So each state education department has different programs, legislations, and ways of dealing with the bullying. But the federal government, since way back, has done a lot about bullying in the schools, like funding programs, funding research. So it's something that is, it's there. Just go bullying, and then you find tons of things in this country, in many countries. I know a person, a professor in Colombia. She's an expert in bullying in Colombia. And they do a lot of different things in Colombia, in the schools to prevent bullying, because it's more prominent in the schools when boys and girls need to, show their power over their peers. So when you come and go to like couples relationship, not necessarily called bullying. There is a different kind of definition for that. So when you talk about bullying, it's really about kids in middle school, kids in high school. After that is racism, is discrimination, is harassment, is sexual harassment, and all the kind of things. So it's important for us to separate. So otherwise we don't know what to do, because it's everything. Bullying is not everything. Yeah. It's very specific. And interventions need to happen in the schools. Change the culture in the schools. Train teachers, involve mental health professionals in the schools. Bring the parents, work with the parents. Kids go to psychotherapy to help them individually. That's how we deal with those things. Other things, are like, in this country, we've been very lucky, because there is a lot of movements pushing for legislation. For instance, for people with disabilities. Here, nobody calls people blind. He's a blind man. No, we say he's visual impaired. There are a lot of different things to help people with vision, difficulties. By law, they passed the Act on Disabilities, the ADA, in the 1990s, early 2000 in this country, that helps people who have problems because they have some kind of, body limitation. So, and we are all being educated and say, no, he's not a blind man. He's a man with a visual, disability. He's impaired by this. And there are like buses, how to enter in buses, how to be in the metro, how to be in the schools, how to, there are many different things in this country that recognize the humanity of people who have some kind of disabilities. And we are teaching our kids now here, if any of you has had kids in the schools in this country, nobody calls you blind, and if you call you blind, it's because it's bullying. It's not anything else. Mm-hmm. But we made a lot of progress.
I think here in the United States is correct. Maybe we do. How is it in Colombia, Apollinar? Do they have legislation for this kind of discrimination?
Maybe it's not listed here.
Apollinar. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit.
Sí, en Colombia existe, pero es muy nuevo. Es decir, este problema del bullying se ha ido a ser más evidente. Se trata mucho más hace aproximadamente unos 20 años por la atención de los psicólogos, de las trabajadoras sociales. Se viene trabajando y estoy de acuerdo que así como en Estados Unidos, el bullying más que todo se trata lo que sucede en la escuela, entre los niños, y yo creo que es muy importante que cuando el niño va a la escuela viene con unas ideas, una forma de ser y de pensar que ha adquirido en el hogar. Por eso yo pienso que más que una legislación, yo creo que se trata de un cambio cultural, un cambio de aprender el respeto a la diferencia, aceptar al otro como es. Pero concretamente en Colombia ya es nueva la legislación, pero por ejemplo, Colombia hizo parte de la Convención Americana, la Convención Interamericana de los Derechos Humanos para Personas con Discapacidad desde el año 2006, es decir, hace apenas 15 años. Pero sí existe ya alguna legislación, pero repito, es muy nueva, pero sí existe en el Ministerio de Educación de Colombia una preocupación, una inquietud por legislar y trabajar al interior de las escuelas para combatir o erradicar el bullying.
Qué bueno. Julia, do you know anything about Brazil? How are they dealing with it? I am away from Brazil for such a long time. I'm not sure. And there were lots of bullying in my time when I was in school. So I don't know about legislation in Brazil. How is it?
Like in other countries, Brazil also passed legislation, preventing, bullying to happen. In schools, teachers are trained, and Brazil has psychologists in the schools, in public schools. And although, they have 2,000 kids for one or two psychologists there, but, in that way it's better than here, because in the US, they do not have psychologists, they have just social workers. Anyway, but they passed legislation about, funding for bullying programs in the schools. But like every, countries that are, having budgets that are not big, there are so many other priorities. There are areas, where, violence is dominant in the school, in the communities. But like everybody else, there are many different programs and movements to address these issues. But it's not easy. It's not easy here. It's not easy in Colombia. It's not easy in Brazil.
I think all over we still have a lot to learn. James, please. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was a political science major in college. I didn't go to film school, and obviously, I thought, when I was younger, and not to say that this isn't true, but that you could make change through policies and governments and legislation. And slowly, I became a little bit more jaded with that. I do believe that art has a really powerful impact. And as Paulo was saying, it's really about trying to change culture, try to change perceptions. And I feel like art, especially in films, have a really powerful way of putting people into the shoe of the other and helping them to understand and empathize what others feel and others that might be different from them that they might not understand. And as Julia said, like when you're dealing with bullying and you're thinking about that from a kid's perspective, I mean, all the legislation helps for sure. And I don't know all the stuff that's happening. I know there's a lot of money that's going into it. But I do think that when you see art or when you see films that can speak, I think, that's a really great way to, it's great that you guys support independent film and you guys support films like this, but there are many films that deal with this subject matter, both on the documentary format and narrative. And I think that's a really sort of great way, an introduction to try to help kids understand in a much more visceral way, as opposed to like a rule sort of way. And so, I'm a firm believer in the arts and the impact that arts can make. And I feel like legislation, of course, they can work hand in hand, but, that's why I'm in the film business. And I think, telling stories and making films can make a tremendous impact. So, when you guys see stuff that is impactful or that does capture those things, I think it's important to get that out. It's almost like being politically active, but it's like, get those things out to people and have them, experience it. If you feel like that there's a connection there. And I think that could be the start of that cultural shift and perception that people or kids have of others.
Yes, Julia.
Well, let me agree and disagree. I think, I'm not going to talk about art because that is not the purpose here. But I think, for instance, I would love to have your film, and take it to a school, to a high school. I don't believe in individual change. Like each individual go changing and then one day the world will change. No. The world change when we do a movement, people. Lots of people, lots of different, different ways and organizations and politics and churches and everybody. You don't change because, I decide now. If I decided to do something to change the world, I needed to join something more bigger than myself. So I can see your movie, for instance, could help a school. If a school is addressing bullying, so if a school is already addressing bullying, I see your movie very, very good to have conversations with high school kids.
Absolutely.
So that would be a wonderful way for you to make your film really contribute to something. Because you can, like, an individual see your movie, then you leave the movie and we say, wow, oh, that's great. But nothing happens, nothing happens. So to move things, you needed to be part of something bigger.
Yeah.
So I see your movie, being like a blessing or an instrument that others can use to educate about what it is to be overweight and being bullied. What is it to be, visual impaired and being bullied? And what does that makes to people? But just watching a movie and going home and say, oh, I'm going to now join this and I'm going to, it's very hard, for individuals to have the motivation and the force to go join because, like Martin Luther King said, you needed to have a movement to change the world. And the legislation that we are talking about is because a lot of people for decades, marching, talking, going to the politicians, pressure. And then finally they did the ADA, the Disability Act. But, it was needed a lot to get there.
How do you feel about this, Merrick? The youth, I'll tell you one thing. I agree so much with both of you. I agree with James, and that's the reason why I started this Brazilian Film Festival, Films with Social Conscience, because I think that there is nothing better to impact right away someone than you go to a movie, a nice movie on 2 hours, be it a documentary or a fiction, but that really has a social content, you come out with questions. And the other thing that I did, my festival is mostly done in universities because I think the young people, those of the younger age, have a lot that they can do and say about any, doesn't matter what social issue we are dealing with. And to me, it's always very, very important to know okay, Merrick, you participated, right, to the film. And you were part of it because there was some kind of disability that you have experienced or you experienced. What do you think can be done for others with the same kind of, in your situation or another situation like the Apollinar's situation?
Man, we could talk for hours about this. How long do we have?
Let's start.
Yeah. Thank you, Ariane. I actually appreciated Julia earlier on kind of helping to define what we're talking about with bullying. Like this is something we talk about in schools specifically with hormonal children and young adults. And, I think that's where we see a lot of this kind of reaction to the world around you. I also appreciated Apollinar talking about the importance of the family. I think that's incredibly important to have a strong family. And I think when a society, when the family starts to break down, I think you can see that in the society, and that's a tragic thing. And so I think encouraging that in the world is a good thing. And I get James' point as well, that art is incredibly impactful. And what struck me is that art in its various forms is a form of community. It's a form of something bigger. When you go to see something in an art hall, you're not seeing something that was formed in a vacuum. It was formed by another human being, and you get to connect with that person on some level and find empathy there. If you can study that art piece. And for film, many people bring that together: writers, directors, camera operators, cinematographers, actors. This is a community project. It's a small movement in a way. And so I think even if an individual sees it alone, they are entering into that as well. And so I think that has power in it as well. And I think, I'm somewhat aligned with James on how powerful legislation can be. I think there's great legislation out there. I think there's terrible legislation out there. I think we can progress toward the wrong thing sometimes, and I think we have to be very careful about how we do that. I do like the way in the United States that that power is disseminated somewhat. I think the local level has incredible power to create change for the people that are involved in that community. And I think that is where it should start. I think at the fundamental level, at the family level, this is where I think the most power is. And then I think power to change actually goes down from there as much as you get people together. I think individual hearts and minds have to change in order for communities to change. And I think there's a myriad of ways to start that. For me, being a part of different communities, my family, since I've been in Chicago for 9 years, and my church has been the rock that I'm able to find my bearings on. And if I didn't have that, if I didn't have other Christians and people to lean on, I'm not sure what I would be doing. You know, I think we need some kind of community, and I'm incredibly blessed to have had that.
And then that's extremely important what you said, you know, because at the same time, Julia, is what you are saying, you know, you need groups of people, and it can start on a small group, you know, it starts usually. I'm sure that Martin Luther King didn't start with the whole crowd from the beginning. He had to start little by little. And, but if we start, it's to get out of that inertia. What is important, I think, for any individual, doesn't matter who. Apollinar, for you, what do you think, and how is it doing? How are movements like this being done in Colombia?
En Colombia, en este momento, hay muy buen ambiente para impulsar un cambio de cultura. Ayuda la legislación, pero yo pienso que más es la actitud de las personas. Colombia es un país de multiétnico, multicultural, entonces es un país de muchas regiones. En Colombia hay diferencias entre un municipio y otro, una región y otra. Entonces, por ejemplo, en el campo racial, Colombia hay cerca de 12 millones de personas afrocolombianas y somos 48 millones de habitantes, pero también hay indígenas, también hay muchas personas de raza blanca. Entonces, esto del aspecto racial ha ido generando un cambio de actitud para no hacer bullying por raza. Entonces, los movimientos que hay en Colombia hoy también están incluyendo la tendencia a que la sociedad cambie su actitud, su comportamiento y aprender a respetar la diferencia. Entonces pasa con el tema de género, pasa con el tema de raza, con el tema de discapacidad. Entonces, sí estamos en un momento importante de que la sociedad quiere generar un cambio y estoy de acuerdo con lo que decía el maestro Martin Luther King. El problema no es mirarlo por individuos, sino que realmente se trata de un cambio de actitud, de una toma de conciencia colectiva, de aceptar al otro como es.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I would like to ask one thing that I have been wanting to ask James for some time. What was, I know you made the film is fantastic. Was there one part on the film that you say, wow, that was great. I really like what we did there? You are mute. Okay.
All right. Yeah. You know, I really like the scene with Tom and Lily and the tree.
Oh.
Just from a visual standpoint and a physical standpoint. I mean, it was, you know, I like to give the actors as much sort of freedom, and that was, you know, that's basically like a long 10-minute take with the sun going down. So there's just a lot happening there, and they were so good. I mean, we basically did that twice as the sun was setting, and so I just thought that was really great, and it's such a great moment of vulnerability and bonding and getting to know one another. And, you know, we're working with nature, like we have no lights, you're working with the sun, and just the silhouette of their bodies representing sort of, again, this idea of us not looking at things with so much like not us hanging on to clarity for the wrong reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And accepting us for something like that we are made of something more than sort of the visual in regards to the characters. So there was just a lot of things there thematically that I really thought was great. And, you know, those are things that you hope for. It's not necessarily something you totally plan for, but just the way that the sun and everything worked out, and the way that Merrick and Elizabeth were able to deliver those lines, I thought was just really special.
I'm so glad. That was my favorite scene. I could have seen that over and over again, because there was a lot in it. You know, like you said, it in also the naturality or the easiness with which they took that scene was wonderful. Yeah. How about you, Merrick? What was your, you know, best part in the film?
I could choose every moment, but I'd agree with James. I think that moment with the sun setting was really special to film and really special to see afterward. And what's great about that is we get to visit that tree again and come back in an entirely different moment, one of frustration and pain. And I think those the different way those play against each other is really powerful.
How about on the movie? We also talked, James at least talked a lot about, or at least showed us the scenes of the father really with the girl, his relationship with his daughter. That was not a good relationship. So what on the other girl, right? And what would you, Julia, say about that?
To tell you the truth, I don't remember very well.
Okay.
Can you tell me how was the scene?
Yeah, I can, or James, I think you can say even better.
You know, well, I am curious to know what you think about that, Julia, but, you know, I think, you know, for us, it was more about this idea that bullying is not exclusive to kids, that kids get bullied by their parents. And he was, you know, negligent in that sense. And not only setting an example, but even in the way that he treated her. And so, you know, there's just a lot of moments of contention and obviously detachment and his alcohol problem and other things that get in the way there. But yeah.
Okay. But when we talk about parents, we don't call that bullying. You know, we call abuse.
Yeah.
Or neglect.
Yeah.
You know, we don't call bullying because, you know, the motive is different. You know, the reason for that. Most of the time is because, you know, they don't know how to handle the situation with the children. And the easiest way is to use violence. or, you know, abuse, emotionally, physical abuse.
Right.
So, you know, the father, I remember now, the father, you know, it's a different category. It's a different kind of relationship. It's a different kind of intervention or whatever. So you don't call bullying, you call abuse, you know, or neglect. But in that situation, you know, it is abuse.
And
So we need to call what it is. It's very different from bullying.
yeah, and
Very different.
the school, how do the schools treat, you know, kids that they know? You end up knowing when a kid comes from an abused family or an abused parent or something like that. Is it treated the same way as bullying? Do they have the same kind of intervention in a school?
No, no, no. It's different. It's very, very different. When you have a child who comes to school and the child has some, you know, bruises,
Yeah.
for instance, or the child is behaving differently in the classroom. So normally the teachers catch that and then take it to the mental health professional, and the mental health professional has, you know, instruments to identify whatever it is, and then, you know, call the parents, and if the case, report to CPS, to Protective Services. And then there is a huge process when this goes to the, you know, CPS, the Children Protective Services, that, you know, the departments of family and children services in all cities, they have that. So, you know, that's the calamity now during the pandemic, because kids are not in the school. So nobody who is mandated to report, they are not seeing the kids.
Yeah.
And then so we think that, you know, the child abuse is increasing because there is nobody to see the child with the bruises and then report and, you know, send the social worker to the house to see what happened there. So, you know, this until middle school. When it's high school, you know, the child, you know, the student can tell you exactly what happened, and then mental health for high school kids is more advanced. So they can tell what happened and everything else. And then there are many different things that schools can do to address that issue if it is, you know, caught. Normally, because the kids' behaviors change in the school if they are being abused, even if it's like psychologically abused. Teachers notice that. You know, there is a change. You know, even like, you know, kids who are bullied, etc. Nobody, you know, report. The kids don't report bullying. The person who's bullied does not report neither. So it's someone else who was part of the scene or someone around that you take this to the teachers or somewhere. But the bullied person also, he's very ashamed of what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. James, you this film was done with, I think, if I remember correctly, a very low budget, right? And what can you talk about that? It was very good film to be done with this kind of budget.
Yeah, I mean, it's a credit card film. This movie was made for $10,000. And so, you know, we had a crew of 3 people. And this only happens because of the commitment. Thank you. I mean, it only happens because you have committed artists who are willing to, you know, work on something together as a group. I mean, you know, nobody on the crew got paid. I mean, they got fed. That was basically about it. But it's really, you know, the fact that Merrick and Elizabeth were willing to put in that much time, and obviously there weren't that many characters in it, so that helped. You know, it was primarily about Merrick and Elizabeth, and then, you know, we had the local townspeople come in and drop in and do scenes here and there, but it was really just about getting together a group of people who are committed to the art of creating things that they believe in. And I think that's where we're at. And as I speak about art and film, that's where we are today in 2020. You know, these things, you cannot make a movie. You couldn't make a movie on your own, even if you had money. Even 15 years ago, it was really, really difficult without exorbitant amounts of money. And then even if you made a movie, you had no way of getting it out without the gatekeepers of the studio or going through the studio system. And I think, you know, things have changed tremendously, not only through technology, but through all the platforms that are available on festivals like yours, Ariane, where you can reach a big audience if you make it. And so these stories, all these stories of representation, these stories of empathy, these stories of understanding and change, it's more possible than ever. And it just takes a commitment of a group of people who are willing to do that. You know, you still have to figure out how to sustain people. You know, people definitely need to pay rent and they need to make a living for their earnings. So that part is still the hump and the challenge that we face. But I think soon, you know, as platforms open up, it's starting to open up to try to monetize some of this, to try to pay people who are working on it. But at the end of the day, you know, it's like anything, you know, film is turning into things like hobbies or things that you like to do. Like if you love to play soccer, it's not, you go out with a group of 10 people and play the game. Like you're not making it into a business. You guys are playing it because you enjoy it. And I think people who are into, people who are storytellers and people who are artists and performers, they're coming together like that, except instead of going to play soccer, they're making films and telling stories that are important to them. And I think there's an audience that can be reached when you do that now.
Yeah, I think that is, and one question that came here, what was the name of the town on the film? How did you get the film to be at a town with that name?
Oh, so there is a Protection, Illinois. We didn't shoot in Protection. We shot in Shannon, Illinois, which is pretty close, like maybe 35, 40 minutes outside. And so Protection, again, just was thematically a place of, you know, security and safety for him to retreat to. But the town itself was the real town is Shannon, Illinois. There is a Protection, Illinois. And so we derived inspiration and thought that would be perfect, but we didn't shoot in actually Protection, Illinois. I think Protection, Illinois is a little bigger than Shannon.
That was very nice though. I thought the connotation was really so good. I would like to know if any of you have some other comments, because we are getting towards the end of our time. And Apollinar, would you like to tell us something that you saw the movie, and so how did it, you know, how did it?
Sí, gracias. Yo quiero comentar que a mí me pareció muy importante la película, me gustó mucho, y quizá un comentario final que quiero agradeciendo a las personas que hicieron la película y sabiendo que costó tan poco, solo $10,000, creo que es una película de valor cualitativo, supera inmensamente cuantitativo, pero quiero señalar que es una enseñanza, porque la película evidencia el complejo que tenía el actor por ser la persona principal sordo. Luego está la persona que por el alcohol y por droga también tenía un complejo. Luego la persona, la señora que es ciega. Pero finalmente yo quiero comentar mi propio testimonio. Yo pienso a Pedro, hay que trabajar mucho con las personas que pueden sentir el complejo, porque pienso que las limitaciones están más en la mente que en el cuerpo. Entonces yo creo que el primer paso que una persona racial o, por ejemplo, de un problema racial. Yo creo que lo que hay que hacer para uno superar una limitación y no tanto el bullying o la discriminación es aceptar con dignidad la limitación. Es decir, a mí no me puede dar vergüenza ser ciego o a alguien no se puede dar vergüenza. Es decir, uno tiene que asumir, aceptar su propia realidad como una poder contrarrestar, combatir un poco el efecto de la discriminación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Apollinar. That is really very important, I think, for everyone to understand and to know. How about you, Merrick?
Well, I really appreciate Apollinar's perspective on it. I think, you know, it is true that barriers are stronger in the mind most times than actually because of the body. And I think that's been shown throughout history. There are all kinds of amazing people who have had incredible disabilities who have done incredible things. And I think those kind of people are true inspirations that, and I don't have much to add to that. I've really enjoyed hearing those different perspectives. And I would say, you know, my size has made me a part of who I am. It doesn't define me, but it has shaped me in ways that I wouldn't be me if I hadn't experienced those things. So I'm not being fat and being big isn't necessarily something I want to be forever. And if I could change it on the click of a dime, you know, I might do that if I had that opportunity, like many people, I'm sure. But it has made me who I am today and is a part of my story. And I get to be a part of things like this film and tell incredible stories and be a part of rich discussions and have my own perspective on things. And so I'm not sorry that I've had the lot I've had. I've been incredibly blessed to have lived the path that I'm on.
What is striking me that even just on online, I feel a very strong influence from you and Apollinar. There is a inner strength, I think, that you get from being different in some ways from other people, because we all take everything so much for granted, you know. And until we are confronted with something or some of our own disabilities, you know, be it psychological or whatever. And I think this is extremely important. I really appreciate your comments. Julia, what are your final thoughts on this?
Two things. I read a comment that one of the participants sent about that, you know, his family and communities incentivized, you know, bullying as being a man.
Yeah.
So like a training to, you know, to survive in the world. So those are kinds of things that we needed to change. You know, what is to be a man? You know, there are so many ways to be a man. So many ways to be a man. Can be a big man, a thin man, a black, a white, and vision impaired, or, you know, whatever it is, you know. And that's something that, you know, I think your movie helps to show the different kinds of men people can be, and how you can be a nice, decent, loving, and very, you know, people's oriented kind of person. So I think that's the message we needed to send, that, you know, no matter where you come from or, you know, whatever life brings to you, in the end, we are human beings, you know. We love our mamas. We want to have good parents. We want to raise our kids well, and we want the world to be okay. So I'm not afraid of I have an African-American grandson, and he's 4.5 years old. And, we think about, oh my gosh, when he's 12, what is going to be the world for him,
Yeah.
And so we need to change the world. And I'm sorry, even if I'm a psychologist, I don't believe in individual. We change the world when we come together. And then we want to change something. And and one of the things is we need to change this thing about, the big man being the strong and the violent, and this image needs to change. And thank you so much, Apollinar and Merrick, to be so, in France, they have a say is you are okay in your skin.
Yeah.
It's a thing that they say, t'es bien dans ta peau. You are okay in your body. You are okay in the way. It's very hard. And I apologize in the name of society and people who have bullied both of you, that, we are working hard to change that.
Yes. I would like to read just one comment from one of our panelists here. Excellent discussion about a very important topic. Thank you, for Margaret Roger. And I would like really to thank all of you, because this has been an excellent discussion, and I think a topic that it is so current for all of us. I also want to thank Partners of the Americas, our umbrella organization in Washington, who wanted to bring this kind. It's not the only theme that we are bringing, but it is very, very important, this Partners Talks that we will be discussing. We have been discussing, this is the third one, and we'll have others coming up. But this today was very, very enlightening. And I would like to thank you, because you brought to us some light into our own hidden, unconscious discrimination. This was, to me, a great way for us, the audience, to face our own inability to deal with the issue, and how we can better understand those who are confronted with discrimination. We are too, but there are so many others who have many, much bigger discriminations than what we call a normal person. So it is wonderful. This film, to me, brought a lot of thoughts, and I want to thank you, James, for making it, and to all of you for participating on the panel. Merrick, for your participation and your wonderful personality, which I can sense is really great. So to Barbara, thank you so much from Partners Washington. Maybe you could come out on the screen, can you?
Well, I just want to thank everybody. I really am delighted to have had the opportunity to talk before this about the very topics we have. And our next Partners Talks, we will be dealing with the environment once again, and but in a more festive way, I think, because we will use the holidays in June in Brazil, particularly in the area where Ariana's from, in Rio Grande do Sul. And we'll be doing something on Festas Juninas. So thanks so much, James, Paulo, Merrick, Julia, and of course, Ariane.
Thank you. And I just want to read a couple of things that just came out on the panel. Thank you, everyone. Gracias todo el mundo. Obrigada todo el mundo. From Rodrigo Santiago Perez to all panelists. And the other one is excellent panel.
And I have to say that I want to thank Diane, Sarah, and Jim Christ for translating this. So I hope everyone heard the voices, no matter who was speaking. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.